we're back with me forgetting to change the stream title with Season 5, Episode 23, The Hooffields and the McColts. There we go. Now it's updated. This is the episode in which they go out to this wonderful, beautiful canyon, and everything is death-defyingly horrible. But it's okay, because there's just a few that they can fix, and then they fix it, and they're done. We're good at the end. Who wrote this? This is Joanna Lewis? Who? Hang on. Joanna Lewis. I think that's... Yep. Joanna Lewis wrote Castle, Sweet Castle, and Rarity Investigates, which is a great episode. The Hooffields and McColts. There we go. And this was also written by Christine Sonko, who also wrote Castle, Sweet Castle, and Rarity Investigates. I mean, if you ever, you've seen the Snickers commercials, right? Just have a Snickers. I will destroy everything in the entire universe. Have a Snickers. Oh, thanks. And then they don't want to destroy the universe. It's very simple. So, scroll up a little bit here. Book clubs. You ever been in a book club? I'll raise my hand on that one. You ever had red vines? So, can the animals read? Now, we could take this a lot of ways, and as usual, I am trying to think of the logic in a cartoon. But all I'm going to say is that I actually think that they can't read, but she reads to them. That's what I would take from this. I mean, we know they're sentient and sapient. We know they can communicate, so that's whatever. But I like the idea that they don't read, and she just reads to them. And the books that they have is almost entirely just for, cosmetic. It's just for something they can hold on to or whatever. I'm not saying they can't read, and I'm not saying that I'm going to put my foot down on that, but if you think about it, it would make sense that Fluttershy just reads for them, right? I don't know, I just like that idea for some reason. I would imagine they could learn to read. After all, they can speak, and think, and be. But this brings up another interesting thing. Put my hoof down. Here's the deal. Animals can talk to each other. This is one of those things that I'll admit I never actually noticed until I started actually analyzing fiction. But there's this really common thing, Star Wars does this, for God's sakes, where if you can talk to, humans can talk to animals, and animals can talk to animals, right? But like the one human can talk to all animals, and all animals can talk to each other, regardless of the species of the animal. It's just assumed that animalese is basically a language. And it's just sort of normal. Like, that's the commonality. That's the way they take it. And yeah, exactly. All animals. It's strange. It's understandable why they do that. It's the same reason why common tends to exist in most fictions. And if those don't know what I mean by that. God, I can't talk today. Common exists for everyone to, speak one language, so everyone can talk to each other. It's a way of solving the communication problem. Because believe it or not, communication in fiction is actually a huge issue. For the same reason it's a huge issue in real life. Yeah, Fluttershy is very adorbs in this episode. She is on full Fluttershy. I remember reading at one point, I forget when, that they were considering reducing the amount of Fluttershy rolls and increasing the amount of Pinkie Pie rolls. And I don't know if we've already been there or that's still coming. But I'm like the total opposite on that. Pinkie Pie is fine and all, but man, Fluttershy when she's adorable is just absolutely adorable. Anyways. There we go. Moving on. Twilight is so excited. Of course she is. God, it makes so much sense, right? Of course she's so excited. Oh my gosh. This is going to be great and wonderful and fantastic, and I'm going to be able to do this. I've spent the last 5 minutes running around like a maniac trying to prepare. And what's funny about this is there's two shades of this, and they show both of this here. I mean, I don't know if you've seen my notes. Although my notes they're actually very well organized, but I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't be able to read any of this. Like, you'd look at this and be like, what the heck is this? Which one was this one? This was Spellforce. This is the notes for the Spellforce 3 rumination. I think I did a pretty good job on that, but, let's see if I can get an angle. There we go. There we go. Good luck figuring out what all that is. But yeah, Coach finally put her in. So there's two reasons this is so understandable. The first and most obvious reason is the fact that, you know, she's been just waiting. Like, they've actually had, I've told you, they've had a subplot throughout all of Season 5 of her not being called by the map. In fact, if I might be so bold, I think this episode should have been next. We should have had main attraction first, whatever it is. The next episode we're covering later today. Yeah, main attraction first. And then we should have had the Hooffields and McColts, and that should have led immediately into the cutie remark. I think that fits better, because the whole season there has been this arc of Twilight has not been called on for friendship problems. Just tied into what Outs has been saying for several weeks now at this point, as we've been covering her lack of ability to lead and her lack of ability to deal with friendship problems, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, the point being that she's so excited because she's been doing nothing and because it's been a recurring arc. There is another interesting reason that they highlight very quickly and efficiently. She's nervous as hell. I mean, and I quote, because I wrote this down, how would it look if the Princess of Friendship couldn't solve a friendship problem? It's valid. What's interesting is I do think she was critical to this one, but let's save talking about that for a bit from now. It's true, as it was. Anyways, so naturally, Spike is reading his comics under his books. Poor Spike. And Twilight is just, what could it be? What could this poor thing? And poor Fluttershy. Twilight does not exactly have a good wisdom score. No observational skills. It takes her a while to notice how heavy the books are that she's put on poor Fluttershy. Nevertheless, they finally get there and they're like, which there's so many different friendship problems. I've been studying friendship problems. I've made notes. I've got my notebook. I'm ready to go. Okay, let's do this. I got this. It's gonna be fine. Oh, Fluttershy, here, let me get those for you. And she just magically grabs them. Because she is so... The point of all this is, for once, this actually makes sense. This isn't just being cruel because it's funny, which this show has a bad tendency of doing. See Spike. No, this is Twilight is so... Yeah, tunnel vision. She is so laser focused on this thing. For both the reasons we already mentioned. She's nervous and she's excited. So... Oh, Fluttershy. Yeah, here. Let me get you here. This then leads to the discovery. Now, nerve-sighted. I like that, nerve-sighted. The very first shot is brilliant. Now, forgive me for gushing about animation for a moment. Animation usually doesn't do this because it's expensive and time-consuming. Now, I learned this trick when I was back in high school, specifically. What I would do is I would get a big old sheet of paper. I forget the exact size, but it's basically the size of a fax machine, like the full size of it, right? And I would draw a very detailed, intricate picture on there, and it would take forever, right? Like, this is like a day's project here. And once all this thing is done, then I would scan it and shrink the size. So what comes out is something that looks brilliant, because all that detail is still there, and the mind will catch that. Even if it doesn't notice each individual detail, it will glance at that and think, whoa. And it looks better by virtue of this. Now, this is effectively what they do. I call them long shots. I don't actually know if that's what they're called. Very few animation will do a long shot because they have to sit there and they have to draw out all those little details on a much larger piece of paper and then shrink it down to the normal size. And you can really tell because, you know, Fluttershy and Twilight are like this big on the screen, right? Now, they don't go full depth in here, but I was paying attention. There is a lot of detail into that long shot, and they did like 5 of them, too. I'll cover that later. But I wanted to praise that, because it's very well drawn, it's very well showcased, it does a good job of establishing the scene, but the most important thing it does is it immediately exposits everything we need to know about the situation. On the left side, everything is lush and green, multiple shades of green, no less. There are pumpkins visible everywhere. And there's trees, and there's foliage, and then there's ramshackle buildings, only a couple of buildings, which are just out in the open, you know, and their flag is like 3 separate things which are attached to each other, and it's kind of leaning off to the side. That's the red flag. The other side, the whole mountain is barren and various shades of brown, like it's Grand Theft Auto 4 all over again. And as you're looking at that, there's most of the lumber has been already harvested. There's just stumps of trees. There's no foliage. There's no food. There's no green. All of the trees have all of the leaves gone. And there's a freaking fortress with a solid palisade around it. And a very straight flag. In fact, there's actually 3 flags. Blue flags. Very, very well done, quick and dirty exposition. Bam. You know exactly what you're looking at if you're paying any kind of attention. And they obviously exposit upon this later, but this is another one of those things that this show tends to do, which I'm kind of warming to the more they do it. It's the showing and telling thing. Because they flat out tell us all this stuff later, but they also show it right off the bat. And continue to show it later. Anyway, so great long shot. Look at my notes here. Yeah, they usually show before they tell, too. I agree. That is a good thing. Now, allow me to share something with you guys. Did you know that when you're making something, especially animation, you have to think about every little dinky, stupid detail? I'm sure most of you actually know that. Now, you cannot see what that is. That's just too bright. Look at that. I'm going to have to figure something out for that. Obviously, animation, all that stuff is there on purpose. I've actually talked about that before. Because you can't actually put something on accident in an animation. Not really. Just have them right there. But this also means that sometimes you have to have discussions about things that may or may not be issues. You're probably thinking, Lord, what do you want about? Well, this shows up a lot, but they have there are bugs, there are animation glitches, and that's not actually what I'm talking about. What I mean is everything that's on the camera is there because it was put on the camera. It's not like live action. When you're doing live action, you can and will get things that are accidents all over the place. The reds are on the left, the blues are on the right. I guarantee you there was a discussion about that. Someone, somewhere, sat down and thought, okay, we need to distinguish these two. Let's do red versus blue, because that's the common colors, right? Okay, hang on. Which one do we put on which side? Pause. Why does that matter? Well, red is right-leaning and blue is left-leaning. Oh, yeah. Do we want to make that statement? No, we don't want anyone to think about that with regards to this. We don't want to portray this as if this is a left versus right thing. That's a good point. Why don't we swap it? That way people won't associate it. Good idea. These kind of discussions, you never really see them because they're really small and they generally don't matter. But these are the kind of discussions that go into this sort of thing. It's hilarious, really. This comes to artistic design, marketing, television, movies, books, games. What do you want to put on the cover? Well, if we put this here, it's going to put this up here. And when the sticker goes here, they might put the sticker on this side. Should we do that? Nah, maybe we shouldn't, etc., etc. All sorts of debates. It's fascinating stuff, really. Yeah, there's a reason why these episodes take so long to make. That's why most fiction is... You remember that, 6-minute extant episode I put out? That took me 20 hours of clocked time to put together. 20 solid hours. 6 minutes. Anyways. So, red versus blue. I love... So we get the initial hook. Who started the feud? And why? And what's funny is Twilight... Poor Twilight. She is in so far over her head. And it's kind of funny. It's mostly yeah, I've been there. I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but this is such an obvious, easy decision, right? This is so easy, and this will just be a nonsense thing, right? We'll just fix this, we'll be done in time for tea. And the problem is she doesn't understand what a feud is. Because feuds, let's be honest with ourselves, after a certain point, this is true in real life, they stop needing the excuse. Let me ask you something. Why do the Horde and Alliance fight each other? Why is there a feud between the Horde and Alliance? Now, if you really sat down, you could come up with some actual reasons for that. But yeah, because tradition is really what it boils down to. By the way, what's funny is that's true in-universe and out, with regards to Warcraft. What people tend to do when called to task on it, and they do this in this episode if you're paying attention, is they say, oh, well, they just did this. They look at the immediacy. They look at the things they just did. They don't go back as far as, you know, they could or should. Instead, they just say, oh, they took out this. Well, they took out this. Well, they took out this. Well, they took out this. And it's just immediacy, right? There's even this great bit. Why do you guys fight each other? Hang on, I wrote it down. Where was it? So what do you do when you're not fighting? We get ready to fight. Well, why do you fight? Because we like to win, of course. Well, what are you winning at? Proving that we're the best at proving that we're the best at fighting. Well, why do you want to prove the best at fighting? So that we can win. And it's just like, and yeah, the actual Hatfields and McCoys that these guys are very much based off of. Haven't you been listening? So then, now I've kind of skipped over this, but right at the beginning, right with the initial thing when they're talking to the Hooffields, got to say that very particularly, got to like force a pseudo hiccup to say that right, is they encounter a little pumpkin, which some mice have made a home out of. And the pony doesn't notice it, and Fluttershy's like, oh no! So, we see the feud, we see the state of the two situations, we see Twilight having no idea how to deal with this, and we see the Hooffield, you gotta say it in all caps, and we see the mice. All of this right at the beginning is basically the whole episode in a very quick and efficient nutshell. Again, showing before telling. They start explaining most of this stuff later. Yeah, he shoots the cannon without the pumpkin, because he's really not paying attention. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. One of the McColts, notices that Twilight's an alicorn and actually comments on it. First of all, cool. If you notice, the last time Twilight went out about, someone did that too. That would be when they went to say Starlight Glimmer. She commented on, oh, an alicorn. Remember that? So both times Twilight's gone out, out and about, someone's actually commented on it. Just a nice little tidbit there. But either way, he naturally thinks, how did the Hooffields come by a princess spy? That's impressive. Anyways. The thing I wanted to comment on is, when did we get another princess? Okay, that implies they've been out of communication for a little bit, right? A year-ish, 6 months, whatever it's been for Season 5. That's cool. Here's a better question. They know there's 3 princesses. They know about Cadence. This actually prompts a lot of questions if you think about it. How old is Cadence? How long has Cadence been around? When did they actually become it's because Cadence had to have been around either when they were still getting outside contact or before the feud really locked them down, which I suppose is saying the same thing, just a different direction. So how old is Cadence? When did she get her wings? You get why I'm just kind of sitting here going, huh. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever get an answer for that, but it's just something that made me pause and think for a bit. Anyways. This is a good time to mention the Hooffields are all kind of tints of blue. So I wrote this down. Hopefully I'm going to pronounce this correctly. You ever heard of methemoglobinemia? Methemoglobinemia is a real-life condition that leads to skin kind of tinting itself blue as a direct result of excessive inbreeding. Anyways, moving on. The episode then says something that I've actually commented on before. In fact, this came up during Suikoden 5's run, if you remember. If you aren't with us, then you are against us. That is to say, you're in with us, and you're against us, is how he says it. By the way, I know we can make fun of the accents, but can I just say I love the way that Pa McColt talks. He's awesome. Big Daddy McColt is just... He nails the tone of it without actually getting into mockery. I love it. Anyways, if you're not with us, you're against us. That mentality is a nice summary of most of the problems of this episode. And tribalism when taken to an extreme in general. As I've pointed out before, tribalism is not inherently bad. Not really. You know, there's nothing wrong with picking a side, or there's nothing wrong with rooting for a team. There is something wrong with, you know, being Obi-Wan Kenobi here. So this then leads to them talking about the animals, the hyper specialization, the Horde versus Alliance, and pumpkin quesadillas is brought up. You're probably thinking, Laura, why are you pausing on that? Well, he mentions a lot of pumpkin food, but that one made me think. I'm going to link this in chat. Because pumpkin quesadillas are a real thing. They even look good. So, anybody wants to try that recipe out, please feel free to do so. It looks like, let's see, so we need pumpkin puree, which I could buy at the store, some cumin, garlic, cinnamon, salt, beans, cheese, chili, to tortillas, obviously, and some cooking oil. And that's it. I could probably make this in like 20 minutes if I had the recipe, or the materials, which obviously I do not. Yeah, the pumpkin frittatas. That all sounds pretty good, actually, but it'll get old. Frittatas. I love that actor. So, this leads to Twilight being in astonishingly over her head. Just no idea how to deal with this. And we get a nice little montage where we have the circular logic, and she's just like, okay, let's try out this, or maybe let's try out that. And this leads to my second favorite example of Twilight not paying any kind of attention. The apology cake. Now, if Twilight was paying any kind of attention, she might have noticed what was going on and detected it. You can't tell me they don't have scanning magic. And figured out that something was going on here. She even flat out says, hey, which one of my arguments was the one that convinced you? Huh? Yeah, no, all of them. Are you even listening to me? No, Twilight, she wasn't. But that's okay, because you weren't listening to her either. Again, I don't blame her for that. For the same reasons as before, she was super tunnel vision-y here. And she thought she was at the goal, the success. We're going to make this happen. This is going to great. I mean, she already thought she was going to succeed with a speech. So there's no reason why she wouldn't think this would succeed. After all, one of them's actually making a gesture, so clearly this is the real one, right? They even give a little mini South Parky, I learned something today, kind of a speech. And of course, Fluttershy has a wonderful line, which I'm going to share with you right now because it's amazing. Nothing says, let's be friends, like a cake that says, let's be friends. This is the big discussion point I have for this episode. So, those of you in chat, how stupid is their feud? I'm making a point here. Savacom's like, I'm going to jump ahead on the point. And I'm like, but I'm back here. She's like, no, I'm over here. But one of the things I've noticed in both myself and others, as I've been in my old age, is that it's actually really easy to see a problem and be like, well, here's the solution, when you're outside of a problem. This can also be frustrating because when you're in the problem, you actually want external influence even less, not only because you're already emotionally invested in the situation, but then there's the people who are incredibly unhelpful. Why don't you have gameplay footage behind your game's lore? Because... so I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself at this point. When you are detached from a problem, and you have a reason to fix this problem, you can sit and look at this and be like, And And you can actually analyze and discuss and think and be like, oh, okay, well, we'll just do this, and we'll just do this and this. And it's so relatively easy and obvious for you to deduce how to solve the situation. This is actually the very concept that we refer to as armchair generaling. Now, that's usually said as an insult, but it shouldn't be. Because the whole point of an armchair general is this is someone who is not in the moment, who has more access and information than the person who was in the moment had. Right? I've actually tried to make it clear, especially on my Star Trek ruminations, when I am armchair generaling, I make a point that, now I know such and such, but Ross does not know such and such, or whatever. So I can say this, but they wouldn't know to do such and such. You know, I try to make that point clear, because I have what they don't. And Twilight has what they don't. She does have a logical mind, and she's right. Like, actually, she is 100% right here, just looking at this like, yeah, no, this is dumb. Guys, friendship is better and more productive, and it's going to work out more for both of you. You're both going to be happier. It's such a duh solution. Now, put yourself in the middle of it. This is why I say both sides of the situation, because I myself have also been in that situation. Not a feud, exactly. But I have a problem, and it's something that I'm so emotionally invested in, or twisted around about, or whatever, that I simply do not have the ability to think clearly and logically about it. This is also why the concept exists of sleep on it. Come back at it from a fresh perspective. Because you kind of, the brain, the way the human brain actually works, you get stuck in patterns. And you just kind of start looping around in the same pattern over and over. And once you have that refresh and that reset, and then you come back to it, you're no longer stuck in that pattern. You may get stuck back into it, but you're not stuck in it to begin with. Now imagine you're in the situation that the Hooffields, oh, I did it wrong, hang on. The Hooffields, there we go. And the McColts are in here. And there's no point at which you can distance yourself, walk away, and then come back into the pattern. So all you have is the problem you're cycling, and you're 30 go-to 10ing over and over and over because of everything they already said earlier in the episode. We fight, and then we get ready to fight, and we'll prove that we're better because we like winning. I mean, it's just, and one of those people are cold and miserable. They don't actually mention the cold thing, but they mention how the animals are cold and the lack of shelter, so I don't think it's that hard to assume that one side is not particularly happy about living in ramshackle huts that don't really shelter them from the elements. The other side's hungry. And basically just eat whatever they can get, rather than whatever they want. And let me tell you from personal experience, while starvation is terrible, and a uniquely horrific experience, there's something also wonderfully horrible about being forced to eat only one thing because that's basically all you have. Ramen, excuse me. Or how many of you who went through college, I've said this one before, how many of you who went through college have had those little frozen burritos? How many of you got sick of them? They're real cheap. It's like $4 for a pack of 12. At least it was. So, we have two sides who are stuck in a generational conflict. Oh god, the turnip winter. Yeah. Two sides stuck in a generational conflict, both of which who are miserable for one reason or another. So, as weird as this may sound, this is actually pretty understandable to me. I think they did their due diligence in showing why this feud is continuing. Not just because they're stupid. They are stupid, but that's unrelated. But there's actual reasons behind it. There's infrastructure there. If I can use a parallel very briefly, then I'll move on from this point. It's easy to look at Darth Malak and say, what an idiot. But the thing is, I think, and I've said this both times I've streamed KOTOR 1, that they put work and effort into making Darth Malak a believable idiot. Because there's a difference between a character being well-written stupid and a character who is stupid because the writer was stupid. Anyways, sorry, I really wanted to talk about that concept, because the episode does a weirdly good job of showcasing this, and it's probably one of the better points of the episode for me. So then the fight happens. As usual, I have the least to say about the thing that probably took the longest to make in the entire episode. It's a good animation sequence. There's a lot of little details. I recommend rewatching it sometime just to pay attention to the background. My personal favorite is there's this little pony who walks up. And then she looks up for just a second, and then this giant bale of hay falls on her. And there's this bale of hay on her, like, for the rest of the fight. And they're like, oh my god. They're all covered in death and doom and destruction. It's all cool. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Meanwhile, Fluttershy's like, oh my god, you poor animals are freezing and starving and horrible. What's going on? How do you feel about book clubs? Fluttershy is adorbs, as usual. Let's cover the real question of this episode. Because it's not, I mean, what's the Aesop? Feuds are bad? Duh. I mean, it is, but, you know. Why is Fluttershy here? Well, without Fluttershy, they wouldn't have learned the history. Now, there is actually real life, I agree, as Ross. Real life precedents that the more you know about the history of why, the less likely a particular conflict is to continue. That's not always true. I know it's not always true. But that is something that is real life precedents, and something that has shown up in fiction a few times as well. Did you know such and such and such and such? Really? Huh. Well, okay. Maybe we won't kill each other anymore. Maybe. Think about it. Yeah, I appreciate it, Savacom. I could here. I'll pull out a fiction that is a little safer to talk about. Star Wars. There's a large number of very small internecine conflicts that broke out right before the invasion of the Yuzun Vong during the Thrawn duology. Now, what happened was all of those conflicts were basically breaking out because of an excuse. And again, I'm kind of dancing over some spoilers here. You should read the books. They're great books. But the point is, once someone brought to light what was going on, they were like, oh. And see, the interesting thing is, and this is my opinion at this point, I think there's two reasons why this, here's the history, past truth, now stop fighting thing works, is because A, well, we have less reason to, right? You know, understanding is, let's be honest with ourselves, probably one of the best defenses against violence and hatred. And number two, well, this is my personal favorite, because they have less of an excuse. This one especially applies in real-life history. I'm not even talking about, like, more modern stuff. But there are plenty of times where political leaders have been like, oh, we don't have the excuse to invade you anymore. Okay. Losing the excuse means even if you, the individual, still want to keep fighting, you're probably not going to because you're worried about social norms, or maybe you're going to lose, you know, because of not having a casus belli, you're going to piss off other people and they're going to turn on you, or on an individual level, you're going to seem to be the unseemly one. You're going to be the one who is unreasonable, and everyone else at the office is going to know that you're the one who kept that feud going, even though you had no reason to, and that's just going to hurt your standing, and you get it. So, Fluttershy's presence here as the solution makes perfect sense. She can reach out to the animals know the true history of what happened, she can then share it with them. Okay, that wouldn't work. Now, this is when this gets funny to me. This is why I asked earlier, why is Twilight here? Well, the answer is because, and I'm going to come off as incredibly evil when I say this, but sometimes you need power in order to accomplish peace. You might say peace through power. I mean this sincerely, though. Let me use another example. Actually, let me not use, that's kind of a spoiler thing. All I'm going to say is Farscape. There, I'm not going to go into details. But you need someone who is going to be there who has the ability and capacity to force a situation. And sometimes that is necessary. It is. Again, this is another thing that real-life precedence has shown. Sometimes you need someone to be able to force the people to sit down, and then the person who can actually talk can talk. And you'll notice that that is exactly what happens. Twilight literally says, "Nit." By the way, continuity counter. I don't know if you caught this, I'm sure you did. But you'll notice she doesn't, it's not just the same spell that she used back in Castlevania. She even references it. It's harder to hold an army than to hold 6. Anyways. So, Twilight was the one who had the power to be able to say, hold on a second. But that power by itself wouldn't have done anything. This is something I talk about a lot. You need You need power and intent to accomplish good. I've talked about this constantly on my show and in real life, so forgive me for the repetition. But you need both, right? You need the ability to do, and you need the intent to do well, to do good, right? You needed Fluttershy, and you needed Twilight. Without both, it wouldn't have worked out. Fluttershy wouldn't have been able to convince them because they were never going to listen. If you're paying attention, she tries multiple times, and they completely ignore her. And Twilight was completely incapable of actually conveying any message they needed to hear, but was more than capable of forcing them to listen. If you're paying attention, even before she used, the fact of the matter was she was still successful at getting them to listen multiple times. After all, she was a princess. You needed both. I actually have in my notes here, peace through power, because I knew what that meant, and I wanted to make the joke. I found myself wondering how long this feud has been going on. At least 4 generations from what we see on camera. But really, considering how bad things get in this episode, and how, you know, one of the ponies was totally about to murder the other one with a shovel, I am actually curious. I would agree with Lord Harrimont there. I think Twilight is the one who actually needed the support. As much as I hate to disagree with Savicom. Because we all know that, you know, Starlight is the best pony. The fact is that Fluttershy, and someone said this earlier, Fluttershy I think has the most HP of the main 6, really. And I think, no, Sarah, and she's gone. Or he's gone, sorry. I think that Fluttershy has the most HP and was the one who was really bolstering and defending Twilight. Twilight was the one who forced other people to listen to her, and I stand by that multiple times. But as far as support between the two of them, I'm pretty sure Twilight was leaning heavily on Fluttershy that entire episode. That's true, though. Fluttershy did keep saying, I can't do this without you. It's almost like she was emotionally supporting Twilight. Wait. Really, Vigilant? See, that's funny, because I think the exact opposite. I think that Rainbow Dash has the least HP by a huge margin. There's a reason I keep saying that she's the one with 1 HP. Applejack, I would say, is probably number 2. She might tie Fluttershy, I'm willing to give that. Yeah, Pinkie Pie also has 1 HP. That is also very true. See, the thing is, what I mean by 1 HP, I guess I have to explain this now. What I mean by 1 HP is, it's like, yes, I'm confident, I'm bold, I'm strong. Oh, something went wrong. Bam! And she immediately falls apart. She takes 1 hit. And she's down to 0. I don't know if you can even see this against me. There we go. She takes 1 hit, and she's just like, ugh. And every time this happens, Rainbow just is crushed by this. Same thing with Pinkie. Pinkie Pie's like, yeah, super happy and awesome, and everything's great and cool, until something happens that actually hits her. And then, oof. And then Pinkie Pie is right back down to, you know... Yeah, no, sorry. Emotional HP? Now, Rarity has a few more than 1 HP. Rarity does have some vulnerabilities, obviously. Yeah, exactly, Lord Harrimont. Rarity, she's got some stability and some strength to her, so she can take a few hits. Usually when Rarity crumbles, it actually takes several hits for her to actually crumble. I'm not talking about when she drama queens. That's nothing. Her drama queening, that's her armor, to continue this RPG analogy. She has armor that prevents her HP from being hit, and she tends to drama queen a bit to prevent her. But anytime she's actually hit, she still can take a few hits. So it takes several things to really bring Rarity down. And we've seen that happen, and we will see that happen again in the future. Anyways, sorry, getting off topic here. She definitely acts like she has 1 HP, I agree with it. Saving throws might be a better way to put it, but I'm going to keep calling it 1 HP because it's, you know, it's easier to understand. Like her Rainbow Dash's saving throw is 1. Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well. Where was I? Where did I get it? Oh, right. So why Twilight's there? So she uses the spell, and they're frozen in the feud. There's a really cool long shot where we see the gradual change from the past to the present. It's really cool stuff. And this, of course, leads to the solution. This is probably the weakest part of the episode for me, but they built it up sufficiently that I'm willing to accept the fact that the episode's solved in 2 minutes. That's just something that television does. That's always irritated me. I watched Star Trek too much as a kid. So that always irritated me a little bit. So I love the little bit. We can cook all kinds of foods. Guy shows up. Not pumpkins. Twilight's gonna solve quantum physics. It's awesome. You ever wonder how many other ponies can talk to animals? Because you gotta figure it's not a unique talent to Fluttershy, right? Which brings me up my question. I wonder if any of the Hooffields... Oh, I said it wrong. The Hooffields, there we go. Or the McColts can talk to animals. I mean, I would imagine that they hadn't, but I wonder if they could. Yeah, we know it's not genetic, that's true. Just food for thought. Like, there was a tidbit where they're like, okay, we don't need to understand animals to know what you're saying there, you know. Anyways, food for thought. We gotta rate this thing. So I'm thinking blue, black, like my soul. There's some white there, too. Where's our episode? There it is. I have to admit, I was prepared to be kind of meh on this episode. But it genuinely made me laugh. It was legitimately adorable. And there was a surprising amount of actual work put into establishment and build-up. Like I said, the feud was actually pretty well designed. And there's some pretty decent stuff doing... I think you're right, Lord Hermon. That's a good thing, though. There's a pretty decent amount of work and effort done to making the episode make sense, basically. Unlike, say, Castle Sweet Castle, which was another episode by this duo, which only really made sense if you presume that they're idiots. By contrast here, it's like, yeah, okay. So I see one vote for red, and 1 vote for green. Oh yeah, the original feud was really stupid. I think I'd personally say this is above average for me. The construction and the establishment helped pull it up substantially for me. And it was adorable. And, I mean, it's not really... no, green is below average, Lord Irma. The words... There's... Lost my train of thought. It's not a great character piece, but at the same time, this is one other block in the wall we're building. You know, the fortress we're building of Fortress Twilight. No, I'll watch this again, personally. Those of you who are voting it down, give me some reasoning. Why is it so down for you? I'm just curious. No judgment. Sorry, I'm looking at my other episode notes here. Sure, Lord Harriman. We'll go with sure. Sure. That's a decent one. I could see this being a yellow. It's just... I gotta wait. I gotta wait for people to type. Well, what's our next episode? I gotta do some prep work here. Our next episode is Main Attraction. And a Sonic the Hedgehog ad for some reason. Ah, yes. This one. I'll give you a small story. Oh, this is the final episode for Amy Keating Rogers. Aww. She's brought some... She's done some great stuff. She gave us Best Night Ever. She gave us The Mystery on the Friendship Express, Pinky Pride, Testing 1, 2, 3, Lost Treasure of Griffinstone, Cantalark Boutique, and Crusaders of the Lost Mark were all Amy Keating Rogers. That's some good stuff. It'll be interesting to review an episode that, well, we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, I get you, Lord Harriman. I understand. I get you. I suppose... I suppose I should restructure my naming schema, because I call it average, but some people use a system where every... episodes are rated versus other episodes. Like Sci-Fi Debris does this with his Star Trek reviews. All his reviews rate all of Voyager versus all of other Voyager. So even a good episode could be seen as average because it's average. Or DS9 is actually a better example of that. I don't do that. If I was to theoretically review a series and every single episode was average, then I would go with that. Even though that doesn't make sense if you use the word literally, because every episode cannot be average. It doesn't work that way, right? Because everything has to be versus each other. I tend to review things versus everything on a universal scale, which is the kind of thing that I do with my video game reviews, too, if you're paying attention. You know, I can review Life is Strange alongside Grand Theft Auto, alongside Cyberpunk, and review the three against a universal scale of overall quality. Anyways, I'm going to quietly review this and not tell anyone what the number is, or the color I picked. And that way nobody will be mad at me. Let me chop off the local recording.